And welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we're taking it back to basics a little bit. We are doing a diner style onion ring. Now this is a very simple and basic onion ring, really delicious and very easy to do at home as long as you don't mind the mess of deep frying. And we use just a pretty standard storage onion for this. Here's our ingredients. So obviously we have an onion, some baking powder, a little bit of salt, 1 egg, some buttermilk or kefir. We're using kefir this time. Some breadcrumbs and some flour. So first things first, we are obviously going to be cutting our onion into rings. So really you can decide how thick you want the onion rings to be depending on taste, honestly. Normally you would cut an onion in half to make it a little easier to peel, but we want those full rings, so we're not going to be doing that. So once you've got your onion peeled and ready to go, this is when you can really decide how thick you want those slices. So we're doing a really thin slice here. This is about a 1/4 inch thick slices for our onion rings. And these will cook pretty quickly because they're so thin. Now, different kinds of batters really call for a different thickness of onion ring, but the batter we're using really works really well with a nice thin, small onion ring. So first thing we're going to do is get them coated with some flour. We just want a light dusting, so we're going to have this rack standing by, so that once we have them all covered with flour, we can put them on the rack, give them a little tap, and make sure they're not just coated with flour. We just want them to have a dusting. So once you have all of your onion rings set aside, give it a little tap, make sure that there's no big clumps of flour or anything on there, and we can start putting together our batter. So we're going to start with the egg. And then we're going to add the baking powder and salt to the flour. And we can use the same flour that we used to dust the onion rings. Give that a good stir, make sure it's all well combined. And then we're going to add that into the egg. Well, first we're going to add our kefir. And again, buttermilk or kefir, either way works. Kefir is quite a bit thicker than buttermilk, so you might need to compensate a little bit. You'll see when we actually mix in our flour, the kefir ended up being quite a bit thicker than we expected, so we had to compensate with a little bit of water, but not a problem at all. You mix in your flour mixture, and you can see in our case it made a pretty serious paste right away. So we just compensated with a little bit of tap water. Because you do want quite a soupy batter. You don't want it to be clumpy, you don't want it to be thick. It should be pretty thin. So we're just going to add a little bit more tap water to that, and you can sort of eyeball that. It's really going to depend on really going to depend on how thick the rest of your ingredients are. Alright, so there we go. Once we've got everything well combined in there, we're going to start adding our onion rings. Just make sure they all get a good coating of the batter. So you can give it a little hand toss in there, make sure that they're getting a good coating of that batter. It'll stick to the flour really well as well, which is part of the reason you want to add the flour on there. And then we're just going to pop that back on the rack. Again, we want to sort of let any excess drip off. Now once you have your onions coated in the batter, you should already have your oil hot. We don't want this to sit around like this for too long because flavors are going to start doing weird things if they sit too long, so we want to make sure that they are ready to go. So in small batches, we're going to get that into our breadcrumbs. You can season your breadcrumbs, of course, with some herbs or whatever. We're just using plain breadcrumbs. These are a very basic onion ring. And then from the breadcrumbs, they are going directly into your hot oil. So you can see there, we have that nice and hot. And again, because these onion rings are quite thin, they will cook really quickly. So you get that really nice golden brown. Once it's that uniform color, they're ready to go. You can take them right out. And then once you have all of your onion rings, we did them in batches. You want to make sure you don't crowd your pan. Too many in at once will lower the temperature of the oil. And if the oil is too low, your onion rings will come out greasy because the pressure of the heat is not pushing all of the juices out, and they start to absorb that oil. Once they come out, while they're still hot, you do want to give them a little sprinkle of salt. Make sure they're well seasoned, and that's it. They're ready. That's the whole thing. They're really, really simple. Goes really excellent with some nice ketchup or a spicy mayo. Super, super easy to do. And again, if you don't mind the mess of deep frying, it's a great thing to pull out at a party. So if you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. And remember to love your food.